is Karen S., and this is the Fallacy Count review of Matt Bergengate and Sci-10 Dillahunty debate. Yay!
What the hell is that? It looks like a pirate. Oh well. Okay, so Deconverted Man gets a special pleading pardon. She'll be writing you soon. Deconverted Man to set up an appointment. This is part 2 of the cross-examination where Matt will question Sci, and in the video it begins at around timestamp 47. You can then link to Deconverted Man, who will be doing the final 2 minutes of this cross-examination. Again, I will be keeping my comments to a minimum and using only nominal explanation as needed. We have ignition. We have liftoff.
For the United Launch Alliance, Delta 4.
So you're not an evidentialist anymore, even though at once upon a time you were?
I would say that I'm the ultimate evidentialist.
Hey everybody, it's me again! Yay, I'm in the video! Yay! Get out of this video and get back into my videos. Actually, no, don't do that. Yeah, okay! No, wait! Oh.
I would say all evidence points to the existence of God.
Alert.
Ultimate evidentialist. In certain respects, this is a sad and desperately false statement on Sci's part. Even Christian websites categorize precepts separately from evidential apologetics. There are interviews where Sci explains how he quit using evidence-based apologetics. The reason he's been embraced by Eric Hovind is because Eric can circumvent the non-existent evidence of the young earth creationism he espouses.
A presuppositionalist is the ultimate evidentialist. I don't say special evidences point to God. I say that you can't make sense of any evidence unless you start with God.
But you don't present evidence in any defense of God anymore because...
I present evidence when I share my faith.
Sharing one's faith is not evidence, but I should note that by definition, faith must contain an element of doubt. The book of Hebrews makes the degrees of faith very clear. So for Sci to assert such conviction and knowledge seems to be contradictory to the message of faith, which is the pillar upon which most religions are built.
I go for a walk, I look up at the stars, and I actually laugh that there's people out there who look at the sky and deny that God exists. I present evidence when I share my faith. But when somebody says you're nuts for what you believe, then I don't put them in the judge's seat and God on trial.
Okay. In the past, and I apologize for bringing up the past because we haven't spoken much, and so you'll have every opportunity to correct this, but you've said that God reveals things to you in such a way that you can be certain.
To everybody.
Well, for now, we'll just stick with you.
Well, I say he reveals things to everyone such they can know.
I understand that.
That's what I say. Yes.
How does that work?
That would be a very good question if you could know that you were in a brain in a vat.
Ah.
You could be a brain in a vat!
So that you're not going to answer the question.
No, I would say it's irrelevant. Your question presupposes that it's happened.
What my question presupposes is irrelevant to whether or not you're willing to answer and give the explanation that no presuppositionalist has ever done, which is how is it possible for God to reveal things to you in such a way that you can be certain?
Because he's God. God can do that.
Oh, okay. Hang on. No.
If Sci wants to talk about problems, I'd say the most serious problem of his Christian worldview is its lack of explanatory power, as can be seen when he gives answers like this. Appealing to an authority without an actual explanation or instruction is insufficient, and therefore the claims of having an accounting or justification can be dismissed outright.
You've said that you believe that we all already know God exists.
That's right.
And you're convinced that this is true.
It's not whether I'm convinced or not. It is true.
Okay. And it's absolutely impossible for you to be wrong about that.
About that, yes.
Okay. So what about the Paraha, the tribe that has no God concept, who has no... Well, they didn't have numbers and any other things, but they didn't have any God concept. And when the missionaries went down there, they were baffled by this, that they had no appeal to super.
That's a great question, because if I ask people in this audience, you say, you have no God concept either. Why did Christians send missionaries to them, though? You see, because if they did not know...
that this
hang
has
on.
Anything to,
if
no,
they
no,
didn't
it's
know,
my time for questions.
Okay.
And if you get derailed, I want to know, what about the Paraha?
What about them? They know that God exists.
Even though they have no concept, no language, no nothing.
I deny that.
When presented with the concept...
I deny that. That's why we send missionaries, because if they didn't know that God exists, sending missionaries would be the worst thing we could do.
So
we send missionaries...
You deny what the sociologists who went down there, who studied them and reported back, have to say.
Exactly.
Okay, fine. What about babies?
What about them?
Do they know that God exists?
Yes, they do.
How can that be the case when we know that babies develop a theory of mind over time? How is it possible that they can know that God exists when they cannot, and there's no demonstration that they can be aware that there are other minds until some period of time has passed?
Well, you're telling me something you know now. Is this what you believe, or is this what you know?
What difference does it make? I asked a question.
Well, you believe it. You believe that that's the case. I don't believe that that's the case.
I believe that that's the case because that's where the evidence points.
Evidence presupposes truth. Truth presupposes God.
Okay. So God makes it so that we all know He exists.
Right.
What do you mean by know? Do you mean just that we're aware of that God exists, or that we...
You have sufficient knowledge of God for your condemnation. Okay. Everyone. That's why we send missionaries.
How can someone know something and yet not be aware of it?
Well, I say they are aware of it, but they suppress the truth and unrighteousness, as this is.
Well, if you suppress it, then... Well, how is it that somebody could know that God exists and be aware of it, and yet be convinced that they not only do they not know it, but they don't believe it?
Well, it depends to the degree that they suppress it, because God hands them over to it. Because I went to the Atheistic Reason Rally a couple years back, and the guys, high school age, college age, I could reason with them. The guys that were 40, 50 with their tight ponytail, the greasy ponytail coming out to me, they were just giving me the finger. They wouldn't talk to me. God hands them over to it. Are they more convinced that there is no God? I don't doubt it. But God hands them over to their suppression of the truth, and that's why I urge you in this audience to repent before it's too late.
My ponytail is pulled so tight that it eventually fell off, but but I am a 40-something, and while I won't give you the finger here, we'll hold off for later. Why would, if God can reveal the truth that He exists to everybody, why would He leave the most important message? I'm assuming that the gospel message is more important. I mean, it's the gateway to salvation, supposedly. Why would He leave the most important message prone to mistakes from poor apologists, scribal errors, and the limitations of reason, rather than directly revealing that to everyone?
For a reason which is perfectly sufficient for God.
Okay. So if God made you certain that you're correct about all this, what do we tell the other Christians who also think that God made them certain, yet they disagree with you on points of doctrine?
Well, I would ask them if Scripture is their ultimate authority. If it was, then I would do a Bible study with them, and I would show them in Scripture. See, I'm not beyond correction, but Scripture is my ultimate authority, and therefore that is where the argument lies.
So, Cy, is it just faith that saves a person, or is it faith and works? Maybe you can appeal to the Pope on the basis of the truth of Scripture and see what he has to say. This is why I call this wishful thinking. The Pope is the ultimate interpreter of the ultimate authority for the Catholics, and it has the legacy for the claim of revelation in a way that can be certain. This is just one more contradiction that Cy will have to deny as not a contradiction in his worldview.
Okay. And so it's because Romans 1 says that everybody knows.
Right.
Yeah.
And it says the fool has said in his heart there is no God.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Right.
What does that mean, by the way?
Well, actually, you know what? I just heard recently that the Hebrew is, the fool says in his heart, no God for me.
Oh, okay. Cool. So you believe that God reveals to all of us in ways that we can all be certain?
Everyone is certain. Not can be certain, is certain.
Okay.
That's why they're without excuse.
Why wouldn't that mean that God revealed to me the fallacies in your argument and the objections to your position, which would raise a contradiction?
Well, because fallacies assume that God has revealed himself to you. Because you appeal to logical absolutes which you can't make sense of without God.
That's what you say, but that's not what I say.
Well, the thing is, you can't know you're not a brain in a vat.
You could be a brain in a vat.
Seen that.
I didn't
you
say
said that. Yes, you did. I have video of you.
I said I can't
You
demonstrate.
said you could be a solipsist.
Yes, and so the issue with solipsism is that there are solipsists who assert that we are in fact, that they are in fact the only mind, and there are others who just recognize that we cannot demonstrate that we're not. So let me ask you this. If something hasn't been demonstrated to be impossible, is it then possible?
No. Well, it hasn't demonstrated to be impossible?
If you haven't demonstrated that it's impossible, does that mean that it's possible?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay. And if something hasn't been demonstrated to be false, then is it then true?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Great. So then why is it that when we talk about this, and I honestly recognize that I can't demonstrate that I'm not a brain in a vat, you keep coming back with, I can't know that I'm not a brain in a vat, or that I could be a brain in a vat, neither of which have I said or conceded.
Well, when you say that actually I'm kind of a solipsist, you did
Yes.
concede it.
No,
because
no,
the
no.
thing is,
I just gave you the explanation for the different forms of solipsism. When I said I'm kind of a solipsist, I'm talking about the solipsist that recognizes that I can't prove hard solipsism is false. I'm not saying I'm kind of the guy who believes that I am the only mind. Otherwise, why the hell would I engage anybody in conversations?
well, the problem is that you believe in logical absolutes, and your finite mind cannot know an absolute. It's impossible.
I haven't claimed to know an absolute. I've claimed to believe that they're true, and they can seem to be consistently true, and you agree.
But they could be false.
Could they?
Well, that's my question to you.
What is your justification? I haven't said that they could be false. I've just said, as I just asked, if something hasn't been demonstrated to be false, is it then
Right.
true?
Well, that's why I'm asking
and
the
if
question.
something hasn't been demonstrated to be true, then is it false? No.
Right.
So it may not be the case that they're false, and it may not be the case that it's possible that they're false.
What's your question?
Isn't that correct?
I don't hear that. What's the question?
All right. When you're trying to convince someone, how much time I got left? 2 minutes. Oh, okay. When you're trying to convince someone of something about which you disagree, isn't it wise to start where you do agree and work from there?
I would say in many situations, but Jesus Christ said there is no neutrality. You're either for me or against me. There is no neutrality in this instant. If I assume neutrality, I'm denying what Scripture says.
So if we're going to go about trying to be reasonable, why isn't what you just said a case of special pleading?
Because this is about something that Scripture has revealed that all of you know. And if I go to a neutral position, I say, well, let's put God on the shelf. Let's see if we can argue to the existence of God. I'm denying what Scripture says. It says, do not answer the fool according to his folly, lest you be like him.
But that doesn't answer my question of
Sure
why
it does.
that's not special pleading. All you did was demonstrate that it is special pleading.
What's wrong with special pleading in your worldviews?
It's a fallacy.
It's a logical fallacy?
Yes.
Do you believe that, or is that true?
I believe it.
But it's not necessarily true, right?
Well, it's true in the sense of my definition of being consistent with reality. In reality, it's a fallacy.
Are the words on the screen the deep, meaningful complexity of nature in and of itself? Yes, they are. If you click them, will you not go to the next video in this series? Yes, you will. I know what you say. Shink! You say that your might is equal in proportion to the greatness of the sword. Yes, deepness. Click now.